guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that y'all are here. If you're new here, what I do is I talk about witch history, dark history, native history, all that kind of stuff. And while I tell the story, I put makeup on my face. And if that sounds awesome to you, please subscribe as I'm trying to grow. But today, just kind of imagine yourself and you're going to church, okay? And there's a young boy at the door, and that young boy is going to determine whether or not you die. Yeah, we're talking about the biggest witch trial that happened in Sweden, and the number of deaths, and all the deaths occurred in one day. So let's go ahead and get this party started. And yes, you heard that right. A lot of freaking people in one day. And this is a torsaker in Sweden. We're in Sweden. This took place in 1675, so we're still like in the 1600s as we were talking last week. This trial is actually the result of another witch I've talked about, Malin Madsdottir. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that story with this story as well, because they kind of go hand in hand. So it took place in a parish, of course. They in this one, they did not have separation of church and state. So priests and stuff like that had to abide by the government laws. So you would think that that would be a good thing, okay? But this is during the Great Panic, basically the great noise where everybody is tripping over witches and people having, doing witchcraft, and all these books are coming out. These demonologists are coming and looking for witches, and it just gets bonkers. So if you see my other video, I know that y'all seen that we've had issues with kids coming and saying things that are not true about people. Okay, and so that's definitely the focus for today. So we're in Torsaker. That's, it's during the Great Noise, which resulted in 300 executions during an 8-year span. It did stop after 1676, and you're gonna find out why, because it's just it's bonkers to think that doing this was okay. And the way they get away with it is absolutely mind-blowing. So, let me tell you about a man named Lars. Okay, this guy, he has like a whole long name, but they call him Lars. Lars is a preacher, okay? He's an educated preacher. He went to school, became ordained, priest, whatever, and he is in this village. Well, the parishes during this time have been told by the government to preach about how there are witches among them. Yeah, there's witches everywhere around everybody here, and we have to find them. Like, that was the government's thing at the time. And so the pastors or preachers or whatnot, they're all like, okay, well, I guess that's, what we're preaching. We're preaching that, that there's witches every single, around us, which it's not a lie, because we're all around you, and you just don't know. You know what I mean? What ends up happening is this kid says that he saw this girl, Gertrude Seven's daughter, doing witchcraft. Okay, and this is kind of what sparked it, because she named somebody, and then it just kind of went from there. That's when we were talking about the island of Blockula, where they take these children to sell their souls to the devil and to have relations with the devil and stuff like that. And they would fly there, of course, on their broomsticks. And, this was happening is what they thought. Okay, of course, this is not what was really going on. Not at all. But this kid, and we got another kid in the story that stirs the pot. Okay, make it make sense. I don't know what's up with these kids and trying to do this. This created a large witch trial in Mora, which is a place I think we've talked about before as well. And because of this witch trial, the Madsdottir witch trial, we end up in Torsaker, okay? And we end up with a lady that is pinpointed by basically a stable boy. Not like by anybody, not anybody that has any kind of high rank or anything like that. It's like a gardener kid. It says he saw her doing, you know, some kind of magic. Now, you gotta think that the Witchcraft Act is in full swing at this point because of all the demonology books that are being written and all the demonologists that are going around and doing all this crazy stuff. And so 17 were sentenced to death at that trial, and the witnesses were punished. The children were punished. I'm pretty sure now I remember talking about that. And the children were punished in that trial. But unfortunately, they didn't stop there. Okay, and so that's where we're at today. We're going forward to Torsaker and what happened there and what the kids did there. So a man named Johannes asked Lars, because they're both from two different parishes. They're like, hey, do you mind coming over to my church and helping me get rid of witches in my congregation? Because remember, at this time, they're preaching that, you know, there are witches among us, and yada yada yada, and all this other kind of stuff. Okay, so let's talk about Lars for a second and talk about what kind of dude he is, because he's actually a very feared preacher. He's like the fire and brimstone type guy. And after all of this goes down, people like did not go near his house for 60 years. After this happened, what I'm going to tell y'all, they did not go to his house for 60 years. Nobody went there. No. And we know that because the grandson actually wrote a little bit about this. And we'll get to that here in just a minute. But just imagine being so feared after this that nobody will even like approach or go around your house because they're like so freaking scared of you. Like, that's just bonkers in my opinion. I don't even get it. But it is what it is. So he was a very feared preacher. He wasn't the best thing. What he would do, okay, because his way of looking for witches was a little bit different than our conventional methods that we have always talked about, okay? And what those are is he was using children. Like I say, he was using children to make them say that certain adults had done certain things, you know, taking them to Blockula, had their souls sold to the devil, had relations, was made to sign, you know, go to Sabbaths and made to sign their name, you know, all the things. Okay, and so now you have to realize that these kids probably heard about the other kids that got punished in the other trial before this one for getting busted for lying. And so they probably didn't want to say anything, but that wasn't enough for Lars. No. He's like, no, I need more. I need y'all to start telling me stuff. And guess what he started to do in order to make them tell him things? Is bonkers. He would dunk them in like the ice cold water of the lake. Like, you know, if there's like a hole in the ice, because of course this is sweet and it's cold. And like they would dunk them in there until the kid basically said whatever he wanted the kid to say. Like, it was absolutely, it was crazy. And so this man ends up having all these children, after doing terrible things to them, named, you know, and so he uses these children as reason to start arresting witches and things like that, supposed witches, you know. This is just what these children are saying. Children. And the fact that he tortures them for a confession just so that he can like push his narrative. Man, how many times have we seen that shit, you know? Not only would he dunk them in cold water, he would whip them. He would put them in an oven and then like spray or use some kind of accelerant and act like he's gonna light it on fire and light them on fire or broil them. Yeah, like this Lars guy, who is a priest of a parish, had a church, okay? And so after he has tortured these kids, he's gotten them to confess, of course, because it's under torture. And Lars invites his congregation to the church. Well, what do they have? They have two boys that are staying outside, and these two boys are seeing an invisible sign on people's foreheads. And if they saw that sign, then that person was a witch. Okay, so he had the kids stay at the middle of the door, like stand at the door and say, yes, there's a mark, or no, there's not a mark. Can you imagine going to church and some kids like, yeah, oh, they got the mark right there, so yeah, they're a witch. And all of a sudden you're in a trial and you're being accused of things you've never even heard of. It's beyond bonkers, okay? So at least 100 people get picked out of this, all right? That's the sad part. 100 people get picked out, and they're not too happy, obviously, okay? So they called out, like I say, they called out about 100. The witnesses were saying, yeah, they took us to Blockula, to the island, and we attended Sabbaths, and they made us have relations with the devil, and like just really selling it. You know what I mean? Just completely, utterly selling it. Although the documentation from the trial is incredibly limited, unfortunately, probably because they feel terrible about it, and they do, because they end up putting like a memorial up for this, because y'all, it's so freaking bonkers. Okay, I know you're probably just like, just shut up and get to it. Okay, so first off, once he arrests these 100 people that these kids point out, okay, make it make sense, but he arrests these people. And even though they arrest 100, only 71 end up making it to the gallows. Now, it could have been not the gallows. Actually, that's a lie. It's not how they go. Unfortunately, no. Some of these people could have been pregnant. There's some that could have ran away. You know what I mean? Or maybe escaped from jail. Like, good for them if they did that. So we're left with 71 people that are going to be led to their death because this man tortured kids to make them say that these people have been doing things to the congregation. Okay, now the weird thing about this is that, like I say, the priests are supposed to go by the government law, but in this they told nobody in the higher rankings, like the commissioner guy. They never said, this is who we suspect, here's our evidence, and we need to know if it's okay to go forward with the trial. They skipped all that. This man thought he had so much power that he just completely skipped over that whole entire part and was like, no, they're all just guilty, and so we're just not going to say anything. Yeah, so they didn't say shit to nobody. They didn't tell the proper authorities anything. So we have 71 people, 65 were women, and the rest were men. And they got marched to basically the center of the town, and where they saw these huge spikes, wooden pillars, right? Like they were cut at the top to make, it was all the way around, like almost like a huge circle, not a huge one though. And the sticks were pointed inwards like this, so that when they put the 71 people in there, they couldn't get out, okay? Because they wanted to behead and execute all 71 people at one time. Yes, at one time, and then burn the bodies, because they were doing the beheading and then the burning, and they were going to burn 71 bodies in this big pile, okay? Like, it was called Mountain of the Stake. Basically, they called it a mountain of stakes because it was just like stakes that went in like this, and so people would start tripping, and they're like, oh my God, they realize they're fixing to die, and they're trying to get out, and there's other people standing up there at the spikes, and they're beheading people that are trying to come out because they're trying to keep everything contained in this fiery hut. But it's not a hut because it's opened up, but it keeps them all these supposed witches in this spot, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy. And so, anyways, they go through with this whole entire deal of beheading these people, lighting their bodies on fire, and then the smell. Okay, let me tell you, I don't know how anybody could have been there that day, like point blank period. I don't know how anybody could have been able to stand that smell. And like family members, once their family member, if they were a witch, once they, what do you call it, got like once they got decapitated, once that person's family member got decapitated, then the family member would try to get their clothes off their back. I don't know if that's like as a remembrance or something like that. But anyway, so according to the grandmother, who ends up telling the grandson, this story of everything, and she says that, like, she calls it like a mountain of stakes, and she said that everybody was screaming and that it wasn't a good time. Nah. I mean, it's not a good time. Not a good time at all for these people. I mean, it's awful. Absolutely terrible. So this is the largest mass witch killing in Sweden history. Okay. And you best believe that after this, they did no more executions after this one, because they caught so much crap for this. It's unreal. Okay. Because it gets even worse. So after these witch trials happened, not really much of a trial, but after this happened, they still had witch trials. Like I said, they had the Madstarter witch trial, where they also used children's, testimony, because we had the daughters that testified against their mom. If you haven't seen that one, it's a good one. But so by the time 1677 came around, the government was telling the priests, "Hey, preach to your congregation that there are no more witches. Like, zit, none. Like, let's walk away from this, as best that we can. Tell your folks, And it's sad that they have that much power. The church has that much power to influence the mind of people. Y'all just think about this shit for a second. They used their power to create their own narrative for people who they thought were these terrible, horrible witches, just because for some reason these men have some kind of witch fetish. I don't know what it is about this and them hating. I don't even think it has anything to do with witches. I think it has something to do with women, just women, with some of these men that persecute them. Because, I mean, like we saw in this one, men and women were executed. So this guy did not care. He didn't care about anybody. He just wanted to I think he just wanted to see some people cook. And he did. He saw 71 people cook in that pyre that day. They all got beheaded, and then they burned the bodies. I cannot imagine that. I could not imagine the smell coming from the sky. It would be so smelly. Oh my God. I mean, I don't even know what it would smell like, but I know it wouldn't smell like no fucking roses. You know what I mean? The craziest part about this, y'all, is when people got home from, like when they got back from going to the Capitol and watching all these people burn, and when the families came back, the boys who had told on all these people were found with their throats cut. Yeah. So you can say that we don't know who did it. We don't know if it was a family member of somebody who, got killed or got burned up. We don't know. But the kids were found that way. And which is sad, because it's not even their fault. They were tortured to say these things. This man tortured them until they said something that made him go, okay, yeah, that makes sense, you know. She's a witch, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's crazy. But after a while, you guys, yeah, they were found with their throats cut, and that is the story of the torture trials. But they did put a memorial up. They did, which is pretty awesome. I'll put up a couple of pictures, of course. But in 1975, they put a memorial stone placed in Torsaker in honor of the victims. That were all 71 victims that were burned all in one day, beheaded in one day, and burned in one big pile in one day. So just imagine that. All because a priest tortured some kids to make them point out people in the congregation, and that was enough for him. He completely skipped the higher rankings of the court order and did what he did. And then now, of course, you wonder why people stayed away from his house for 60 years. Because after this, he wasn't nobody's favorite. He really wasn't anybody's favorite to begin with, because like I say, he was a fire and brimstone type dude. But golly, this guy, he's a piece of work, dude. Like, seriously, when I read about this trial, I was like, 71 in one day? That's got to be the biggest one ever. So I'm just saying, when they come back and those boys who were forced to say these things, their throats were cut. Like, did the town not know that these kids were being tortured for a confession? Confession, you know? You don't know. He could have just took these kids from their parents and maybe gave their parents money to say, I mean, there's so many different things with this that can happen. And so, but anyways, I'm so glad that you guys were here and listening to my video. That is the story of the Torsaker trials in Sweden. Yeah, the largest trial, largest by deaths. Yeah, by far, especially for just one day. Like, it's just incredibly crazy, and the way he went about it was even more crazy. So, anyway, that concludes the story for today, you guys. If you haven't subscribed, that would be absolutely fantastic. And if you are, thank you so very much. But just remember that nobody's told you today, I love you, all right? So you guys have a wonderful weekend.